Okay, I think we'll start now. Welcome to our class today. It's so great to see such a good roll-up. I love this class. I love sharing with people the remedies that I believe are just so simple and so helpful to people. You know, something so simple as a potato. Something so simple as an onion. Has anyone tried some of the remedies that they've learned? Yes? And how were the...
Excellent.
Yes? And they did work?
Yes.
Oh, they do. I know that. Someone didn't work. Anyhow, this is Poultice Lectures Part 2. Now, I've got different poultices today. Now, before we start, I want to talk to you about a disclaimer. As you know, that if you try it, please be sensible. Please be sensible. And I don't claim any responsibility for anything which I'm sharing with you, but I know that they work. I'm sharing with you today remedies. And I like to call them God's remedies. They're God's first aid treatment. Now, if you've got something wrong with you that you have to use permanent poultices on, you really have to think, I've got to go back a little bit further than that. You need to maybe examine what you're doing in your diet and your lifestyle. Because you don't just do permanent poultices on something. They're really like first aid treatment. And they work well. Yes, you can extend some, they can go for a lot longer, but basically that's what it is. So you need to think about what you're putting into your body. And that's why in the book that I've got, in my health training manual, which you would have been given, so much, I've written quite a bit at the beginning of it that's talking about what we need to put into our body, the diet and the lifestyle we need to be partaking of. But you know, it does work. It really does work. When I really class it as a privilege to spend time at different places and with different people in different countries. And I can still remember being over in Fiji, and I was going in and I was doing a weeks-long class for a group in there, and I used to do that. Had done until COVID. I'd done 8 years of it, and I just loved it. And I'd go in for a week, and there was always a different class, and I can still remember one of the group. They said to me, "Auntie Kaye," they used to call me Auntie Kaye. As islanders tend to do, they used to say, you know, your best advertising for this, for what you're saying, is that I'm living it. And you know, it's true. You know, I'm 73, and I haven't got any aches and pains other than, occasionally you move, you lie crooked in bed or something like that, and you get up and you think, oh, I need to. But you know something, I have been blessed. But, you know, I have been so careful with what I'm putting in my mouth and what I'm eating in my diet. As I go through that, and I want to share with you, I could share with you so much more, but this particular class is just really just zeroing in on the first aid treatment. So, going on, God's remedies, they have been used for thousands and thousands of years. Now, I did these last year, but I know there's some new people come in today. The knowledge is almost lost. You ask most people who are my age, I don't even remember them that much. Yet some people do. Some people have heard it from their grandmother or someone that they used to it, and often a lot of Europeans and they came over and they knew a lot more than we know. But the knowledge is almost lost, but they take time and effort. Sometimes they work fast, sometimes slower. You must realise that. They're not always just a silver bullet that will just all of a sudden take it out. but they're wonderful thing. Often it does, but it doesn't always. But they do not debilitate the system. What do you do if you have, I can share with you what you do if you have an injury. These are basically your injury type of things that I'm going to be dealing with. God's remedies. Now, I spoke to you a little bit about this last week. And if you look down the side of it's an acronym, SAAFE. They are simple. They are available, they are affordable, and they take faith. Now, I want to share with you, because some people might think, oh, well, I'm not a Christian. That's fine. But I want to tell you some stories that really show you that faith is needed for some of the healing. As I share this in different places, one lady came up to me afterwards and she said she was from South Africa, and she said that her life, when she was a little child, a baby, her life was saved by her mother putting her in a pumpkin poultice. Now, she said it was cooked. I said, raw? I was puzzled because I had never heard of pumpkin poultice. No, she said it was cooked pumpkin. And she said her life was saved when she was a little child. Now, she told me a few other things, and I have forgotten completely about it. But I do know, and I remember pumpkin. And then I want to share with you something else which I wanted to let you know about. My husband and I went over to America. We were invited over there just nearly 3 years ago this coming Easter. And we were asked to go to a church to share with people who were interested in natural remedies. And I was doing a class, and this is right beside the Loma Linda University, which is a huge, huge hospital complex. They teach not just doctors, it's a university doctor, they have dentistry, they have, like nurses, they treat pharmacists, there's a whole lot of things. It's a huge, huge complex. And I was doing a program, and the guy who organised it said, obviously, there's a number of doctors here. I said, okay. Anyhow, one of the lady doctors put a hand up. And she said, I was talking about the onion poultice, which I shared with you last week. And I said, and she said to me, she said, I want to tell you an experience that she says, I know firsthand. And I have forgotten whether it was a patient of hers or a friend of hers. I don't remember which it was. But she said this lady was paraplegic. She couldn't walk. And how it happened, she said it was a car accident. And she said potato poultices they did down the back. And I said to her, where on the back? And she said, down the spinal area. They did potato poultices, she said, first of all, for 3 weeks, and then she corrected it. She said, look, I'm sorry, it may have been 3 months. She said, I've forgotten how long. But she said that person was then able to walk again. Onion poultice, did I say potato? Beg your pardon, it was onion. I'm glad I've got somebody reminding me. Onion poultice down her back. She also went on to say, she said, there is another case I want to tell you about. And she said this was a person who had paraplegia. They were paralysed for 10 years and they started doing onion poultices down the back. And she said that it took 2 years, but that person was functional again. Now, this is when you realise the power of prayer involved with it. There is power in these remedies. Then that very same meeting, one of the men down the back, he put his hand up, and this man looked, he was in his maybe 30-ish. He put his hand up and he said, I want to tell you a story about my little baby brother when he was small. He said, it's time now, it's gone past, he's grown up now. But when he was a baby, he had polio. And my mother did onion poultices on him, and he couldn't remember how long for, but she said kept doing onion poultices every night, onion poultices, and she said that child could walk then. after it. Amazing, amazing, simple stories, but yet very profound. How much impact that they can have you on. And I can remember another story that I have. I was doing a class in Perth. And when I was doing the class, I have an order of my poultices, and no special reason, it's just the way I've developed it. And I have an order, and I do potato, and then I go along that there. And I often bring someone out from the audience who's got an ailment or something. And this man put his hand up, he says, he put his hand up, and he asked me, I asked him what was the matter. He said that he'd had an operation across his abdomen, and he had a big wound there. And he said it hasn't healed. Now, this man was of island descent who had a very, very thick accent. I'm sorry, I just could not understand it properly. But anyhow, I said, look, don't worry. He said, I will use you. You can come out now. And I did a charcoal poultice on him. And then, would you believe, afterwards, he came to me and he says, and when I put it on him and he lifted up his shirt and I could see he had a scar right across, just above his waist area, right across there. And so I made the charcoal poultice, I shaped it and I put it right across there. And then when I finished, afterwards, he came to me. He was so excited after the meeting. He said, look at me. He says, what? And I worked out what it was. He said that he had, and I realised he had scar tissue across there. And he couldn't bend over. He could only sort of go as far as his knees. And I said, in the 2 hours or an hour and a half he was sitting in the class, he actually came back and he says, look, I can touch my toes. And I said to him, I thought that you had an infection there. That's why I put charcoal on you. I would have done a castor oil poultice if I was going to break up I got it mixed up. I got the signals crossed, but you know something? It worked. Another one too, when we were in America with this man that we were staying with who was actually a medical doctor, and he was telling me that when he went to Nigeria, they were helping people, and there was a group of the African women were outside. They had this huge pot, like this huge, and they have it sitting on rocks, and they have a fire underneath it, and they were cooking something, and they had these huge rocks. And all of a sudden, it tipped over onto this woman, and she had all her legs scalded. And they said, quick, do something. And he's a doctor. He says, well, I knew what I had to do. He said, well, where are the potatoes? We've got none. Where is the aloe vera? We've got none. So what do you use? Oh, they said, we got some onions. So he said, he plastered her full of onions. 2 days later, she was right. And he said he did pray. He said, pray, Lord, you need to bless this. This is not the one that I would have put on. But it worked. And this is the point. It will require faith. Some people will say, well, I'm not a Christian, but that's fine. But God says he will honour it. If we pray for it, he will honour us. And they are easy. Okay, what is a poultice? And I shared this with you last week. It's an application of vegetable, plant or herb. Well, sometimes you can even put fruit on there. Anything, really. It's directly onto an affected part of the body. An exchange takes place. Toxins are pulled out through the skin. And I'm not sure if they say potassium and phosphorus goes in, like in a potato poultice. Some of the poultices don't. They are dispersed via your bloodstream, but some of them pull the toxins into it. Remember, if you've tried a potato poultice, how smelly was it when you put it on and you took it off? It is just normal when you put it on, but when you take it off, it smells. It smells sometimes like a dead animal. It is that toxic. Poultices can draw out infection, fluid or an embedded article from the skin. It can break up congestion. It can relieve symptoms and ailments. It can soothe inflamed areas such as joints and muscle pain, irritating coughs or contusions. Now, how to make a poultice? Well, you just, however you want to mush it up. It needs to be moist, but not dripping. You don't want it to be dripping that it actually messes up everywhere. But it has to be moist. The wetness of it is what's going to make the poultice work. And often you just grate it. You might not be able to see that so clearly, but the other one on the left is just wet, and the one in the middle is oil, and the one on the right is just a grated poultice. Last week we went through potato, onion, garlic, castor oil, cayenne pepper, honey, magnesium, MSM, which is sulfur, and borax and skin brushing. And if you missed last week, we are endeavouring, and it's early days yet, but it's getting online. It will be pretty close to being online. It's on Facebook and it's going on YouTube as well. So, but as I said, it's early days, and I'll give you the address at the end of the program here. Now, I'm going to talk to you today about charcoal. Charcoal is one of the best, absolute best things that you can have in your kitchen or your first aid kit. Everyone needs first aid kit. What is charcoal? What is charcoal? Normal charcoal versus activated charcoal. Now, normal charcoal that you would get... Now, when I'm talking about wood charcoal, I'm talking about any wood that is clean wood. It is obviously you do not want to be using any wood that's been treated in any way whatsoever. It must be clean wood. But it can, and it also can be, it is often used is coconut shells, coconut. That is very, very common and is a very good one. Now, when I'm going to talk to you about charcoal, when I first learned about charcoal, we had a very interesting situation with my son, who went across to visit another. At that stage, I had a boy living in Adelaide, a married son living in Adelaide, and we went across to visit him. But the other son went across earlier than us. We went a few days later, and when we got there, the second son who went across had vomiting and diarrhea. Absolutely, he was so sick with food poisoning. So sick with food poisoning. Can I ask you if you don't mind switching your mobile phones off? It's very distracting, yeah. Okay. But he went across there, and I got there. I did not have activated charcoal, and I'm going to talk about activated charcoal in a moment, the difference. I only had a wood fire that I went out, I got some coals out of the wood fire, I got the hammer and the rolling pin, made it into a fine powder, then I put that fine powder in a blender to try to get it even finer. That's what I used in water to give to him to drink. And it works. If you've got nothing else, I want to let you know your normal charcoal out of your fire will work. But activated charcoal. Now, you can buy activated charcoal in powder form. You can actually sometimes find it in capsules, and you can find it in tablets. Hard to find. It is not the easiest thing to find, and that's why what I've done here, I've got some activated charcoal here, which I've got down the back for sale. If you want some, you can get it. So I've got some more at home. If you miss out today, I've still got some at home. But it is a little bit different. I'll explain it in a minute. What is activated charcoal? Your normal wood charcoal, if you looked at the molecule under a microscope, this is what it looks like. So it's not like a sphere, like a round ball. what happens, it is so many hidden crevices and tunnels and lattices, and the surface of it has been burnt out deeper. And that's what makes it such a strong magnetic pull. What it does, maybe I could say it, and I'll just tell you here first, it is produced at a higher temperature than charcoal, and it is activated with pressurized steam and air. Now, you cannot make activated charcoal in your home. It is done in a huge, huge vat, which they shut to the oxygen. They burn it for a while, they get cold, and they inject steam and air into it. And that burns out that molecule to a much deeper, more cracks and crevices and all that in it. So if you lay it down, it is so much more surface area. It is much more porous than charcoal. It is much more effective in filtering material and is a more effective adsorbent than charcoal. Now, I want you to take notice, it is not absorbent with a B, it is adsorbent. Now, what's the difference? It actually attracts chemicals and toxins to it and holds it to it and binds to it. It's like a magnetic pull. Or even, sometimes I think it's a little bit like Velcro. You know how it has, you can put something on and it'll just hold on to it. So, and it is more commonly used in medicine than charcoal. So it is very extensively used, but I'll tell you some stories. Now, this is in your book. You'll find this under charcoal. But before the French Academy of Medicine in 1831, Thury swallowed 15 grams of strychnine, which is 10 times the lethal dose, with an equal quantity of charcoal, and he survived. In 1913, French chemist Bertrand survived after swallowing 5 grams of arsenic mixed with charcoal. Another experiment showed cobra venom was rendered ineffective in animals when treated with charcoal. Charcoal will negate poisons, right? Now, why? It's the universal antidote for poisoning. Now, if anybody here who has ever had anybody or knows anybody who's been in for a drug overdose into hospital, what do they put in the people? Give them charcoal. I can remember we had a neighbour once who did a drug overdose, and he came out and he says, "Well, guess what?" He says, "I just have had that much charcoal put inside of me." What happens? Because it negates the drug. It has the ability to adsorb up to 80 times its own volume in gases, toxins and impurities. You can buy it in powdered capsules or tablets. Now, this is where you use it internally. And I'm going to show you how you do it internally in a minute. It's very good if you've got flatulence or you've got wind. Very good. It will take it out. It's very good for bad breath, diarrhea, nausea, overdoses of drugs. Now, this is any drugs. It can be prescription drugs too. So if you've got a little child who's taken an overdose accidentally of prescription drugs, well, this is the antidote for it. That's why everyone should have activated charcoal in your cupboard. If you don't have it and you've got to go out to the fireplace and bang it and that, so be it. If you have to do it, that's the way it needs to be done. But can I tell you what? It is much, much easier to have it already there. Any toxin in your body, you take it. It is so good. It is good for candida and thrush. It's good for vomiting, upset stomach, for poisonous bites. And I'm going to talk about poulticing in a minute. This is for internally. Now, if for poisonous bites, I would take it internally as well as externally. Okay? And for poisoning. So if you've got some Any poison that somebody has taken, you just give them mega doses of charcoal. You cannot overdose on charcoal. And by the way, the shelf life of charcoal is forever. Okay? So don't throw it out even if you've had it for 20 years. It's still, if you've got it sealed, it still will be okay. But obviously if you've got it open and it's not sealed, you've got a problem there because it absorbs toxins. Remember that. And you can use it in so many different ways. I'll share with you in a moment. But if taking prescription drugs, you must wait at least 2 hours before or after taking your charcoal. Because you know what? You're going to pull those drugs out. So you have to realise, and you must always drink lots of water because it will constipate, and you need probably to, every time you take a dose of charcoal, you need to have about 2 glasses of water with it. So drink lots of water because you don't want to be constipated after it all. But remember, if you've taken medication, you have your medication, then your charcoal, then your medication. So you can have it if you were on medication, but never within that 2-hour window, either side of taking your medication. Now that's important to note because it will render your medication ineffective, completely ineffective. It will pull it out. Now this is where we use it for external. Now this is a poultice, and I'm going to share with you how we do it on a poultices in a moment. Anytime you've got a bruise, anytime you've got inflammation, ulcers, sores, stings, insect bites, congestion, infections, poisonous bites, swelling, you can use it as a teeth whitener, you can use it for toothache, you can use it for kidney infections, and you can use it for foot odour. Okay, now I'll just back up a little bit on that. Ulcers, absolutely ideal. Now, I shared with you last week, and my husband's Peter's up the back, and he tells me often, start telling a story and I forget to tell you the end of the story. But last week I was telling you a story about a lady we were treating with leg ulcers, and she was healed, completely healed. About 3 months it took, and she wasn't worked on regularly. She was sort of like a little bit spasmodic because she'd lived out of town and she only came into the lady to see her maybe a few times a week. But my friend was using all different poultices, potato poultices, and sometimes there was charcoal, sometimes there was cabbage. I'm going to share with you. But there was all different poultices. Remember, don't just think you're going to put one poultice on. Sometimes potato charcoal is ideal. Remember that. And sometimes you can actually combine them. There's no rule that says, oh, I've made this is a bit sloppy. You know, you've maybe grated your potato up and you think, oh, do it quickly and I'll put it in the kitchen whiz, and it's become too mushy. Well, you can take a lot of the moisture out by just adding charcoal. Or if you made it too mushy, there's no such thing. You have to just put charcoal. You could put in flour in it. You could put oats in it. You could put anything in, but as long as it's the right consistency. Insect bites. My husband we were recently, maybe 2 months ago, I think it was about 2 months ago, out on a farm, and all of a sudden he was bitten by wasp. Was it a wasp? Yeah, wasp. On the front of his leg. Immediately I went in and put a charcoal poultice in, and there was no pain whatsoever. Congestion, I would put it wherever the congestion is. Sometimes it's chest congestion, it could be anywhere. Sometimes it's a bruising congestion. In any infection, poisonous bites, I'll talk to you about teeth whitener. You can clean your teeth with it, but can I tell you something? They say it's fine, and a lot of people do, but I prefer to clean teeth with clay. It does a similar thing, and I tell you what, if you're the one who has to clean up the bathroom, because I have no idea. I can clean my teeth with clay, with charcoal. How on earth the charcoal's got over there, I don't know. It just gets everywhere. And so it is, to me, you, by all means do it, because it makes your teeth nice and bright. Toothache. How do you do it with toothache? Well, what you do is you get, what many people have told me this, and I've told this to many people, you get a tea bag and cut the top of the tea bag, empty those tea leaves out, put a spoon of charcoal in that tea bag, fold it over. Even if you wanted to, you could even put a few stitches in it if you wanted to, or usually holds though, and then you put it beside your toothache. You allow your cheek to keep it in place, and guess what? It takes the toothache away. I missed poisonous bites. A friend of mine, she was telling me that one of her classes, because she does different classes in different places, or she doesn't anymore. But she said that one of the person who came to the class, she said, do you know what? She said they knew about charcoal, and they were out and they were bitten by a snake. And they put a charcoal poultice on. Now, if you were bitten by a snake, you would put a charcoal poultice on. Externally, you drink the charcoal internally. You do both, and you do a lot. You change regularly. And they went into the hospital and they had a test done, and they said, well, you've got no, they said, there's no charcoal in your bite. And they said, well, test the poultice. And they tested the poultice. All the poison was in the poultice. And also it's great for odour. Charcoal is so, so good. Okay, more uses. It purifies water. It's good for agriculture. It'll neutralise pesticides, herbicides and fertilisers in your garden. Use it in your garden. It removes odours, wound odours, your outdoor toilets, dead animal smells. You just throw it around with your dead animal. It'll absorb it. You can feed it to your animals that ingest poison, or you need to want to give them charcoal. 1 to 3 grams per kilogram of body weight, and drink lots of water. For indigestion, mix 1 tablespoon with 1 tablespoon of olive oil and take an evening before bed. That's an old remedy. In many of the old books I've found that. How long do you leave the poultice on? It will depend on what you are treating. If he was on snake or spider bite, which are very poisonous stings, you need to be changed every 10 to 15 minutes until your swelling and pain are gone. You can give orally as well, 2 tablespoons and a glass every 2 hours. That's for 3 doses. That's just telling you to take lots. Keep on with it. 1 teaspoon every 4 hours for next 24 hours. Follow each dose with 2 glasses of water. For less acute injuries, you can leave on 2 to 4 hours, or you can leave it on overnight. Okay, I'll go back now. We'll talk about clay in a moment. This is charcoal. First, we're going to show you how to drink charcoal. Now, here is my powdered charcoal. Now, I want you to be ultra careful when you're opening your charcoal, because it has the habit to just fluff up everywhere, and it gets on everything and you cannot get it out. I'm going to ask you, please open your charcoal over your kitchen sink. Make sure you do not make a mess. Remember, you won't get it, or it'll be extremely difficult to get it out of anything. Okay, and just remember that it is very, very powdery and fluffy. So what I do, I carefully open it. Now, I want to drink it. And so what I do is I get my glass jar. What I do, if I put some water in here and just put a spoon of charcoal in, it's just going to float on the top. So what I do is I put my water in a glass jar, and I put my spoon of charcoal in. You can take a teaspoon to a tablespoon, however much you want. You cannot overdose on charcoal. You must remember, though, one thing it does. You go to the toilet, everything will be black. So don't think that something's happened to you. It will be black, and that's normal. That's what happens. I remember some man, he was an old man, and I told him about charcoal, and he got panicked. He went to the doctors because he was so frightened. Okay, now what I'm going to do is shake it. And then I'll just tip it in a glass. Now, does anybody like to come up and have a taste of this? I will. Okay. And you'll get a black mustache. Just turn around to the camera too.
Sure. This way?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So I drink all of it?
Yeah, you don't have to drink all of it, but drink as much as you can. It's good.
It doesn't taste of anything, really.
That's right. Sometimes some people drink it with a straw.
Thank you so much.
And that's the whole point. You end up you end up with black teeth, black mouth, black tongue, black everything. But that's it. That's fine. As long as you don't have to go anywhere and smile.
I have fun doing that.
Yeah. So that, and if you have a drink of charcoal, even if you have a small amount every night, it really helps. They say that rats who have a small amount of charcoal every day the lifespan is extended like 30%. What is it doing? Remember, it is absorbing the toxins and it's pulling it out. So as you drink it, that charcoal is getting any toxin in your body. It is holding the toxin into the charcoal and it's taking it right out until you go to the toilet. So it's binding it to it, right? It's not, remember the word is adsorbing. It's like taking it through and you're just drinking it. And it's great. Now I'm going to show you how to do a poultice. There's a few ways, and if you look in your book, there's a few ways you can do a poultice, but I'm going to share with you what you can do is, I'll get here. What I've got here, one of the simplest charcoal poultices is to use linseed with it. Linseed binds it. You can put a little bit of linseed. You put in some charcoal, powdered charcoal. And then you just mix it with water. And usually, what I used to do is I used to put this in hot water and it will come up. The linseed actually goes like a gel. But because I've got this ground, it should be fine. And I just mix it with water to make it a paste. And if you put a little bit too much water in, you just add a little bit more charcoal powder. If you haven't got charcoal powder, you could put flour in it. You could put anything in until you make it into a paste. And then it tends to become gel-like. That's actually has to sit for a few minutes because the linseed will need to become more like a gel. Just a little bit more. I've got amounts in the book which is much easier than just taking a spoonful like I've done here. But there's many times I've done it like this. I have got it ground linseed. It works better when it's ground. Now that's becoming, see now what it is, can you see the consistency of that? It's a little bit gel-like. Now that's the consistency we want. Now I want to share with you some other ways which I've done it. I have actually got this dry charcoal and psyllium. And this recipe, or this is in your book to tell you how much to use. I'll just go through for those people who are watching it online. 2 teaspoons of psyllium to 1/4 cup of charcoal to 1 cup of water. Now, when you're using the psyllium, you need to make sure they're reasonably good sized spoons, a heap teaspoons of psyllium. 1/4 cup of charcoal and 1 cup of water. Now, what I would do in there, I've got this half size. I've got this already made up. Now, do you know what? When you get bitten by a bee or an ant or something like that, you don't want to hurry. You have to hurry around and make a poultice. You are in agony. So what you do is you just go and, I've got this ready. All I could do is just go and mix, put some water in it, and it's ready to use. Then I just cut out the back, and I've got one already made here. Here it is. That's already made. Can you see how sort of gel-like it is? Now, I would cut the back out, which I'll show you. Now, I've got somebody got a sore on their leg. Okay, whereabouts is... No, maybe yours. I cut the back of the Ziploc out. Now, I want you to... I'll get you to... Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you what I'm going to do. I've cut the back of this out. I've cut one side of that out. I'm just going to put a piece of chucks over it. Now what I'm going to do is come around here. Maybe if you... Maybe don't sit down. Just maybe stand up and kneel. Put your... Turn around here. No, turn around. Just put your knee up here on here. Yeah. There, well, the sore one, obviously. Okay, so they're quite nasty. We'll put that across like that, and I'll just get some Glad wrap, and we'll put it in place. This is a bit, I wouldn't normally put such a large poultice on there, but I've got it made. And
so half that size probably?
Oh, no, I think it'd be good for it. Okay, now straighten your leg out, and I'll come up here higher now. Just pull your skirt around so that everyone can see it, yeah. Can you see that, everyone?
Yeah.
There you are. That should be fine. That will stay in place there. Now for rolling out, this is the measurements for, I'm going to share you another one. What I've done here, I've actually at home, I've already done this one. I've mixed up 1 teaspoon of psyllium to 4 tablespoons of charcoal to 1/2 cup of water. I've mixed it up into a bowl like a dough and just rolled it out. And here it is. Now I've rolled it out. Sometimes you can roll it. If you only got Glad wrap, I find Glad wrap is too thin and it tends to wrinkle. So this is just some plastic, and I've rolled it out between 2 sheets of plastic. Now what I'm going to do here with this is I'm going to freeze it. Okay? I'm going to cut it up, and then I maybe cut that in half or cut into a smaller one. And then you can have that. It must be sealed in the freezer. Do not make these poultices up ahead of time and just keep them in the fridge, because they'll absorb every odour in your fridge. We had a situation where I was helping a lady. She had breast cancer, and we were doing a lot of remedies on her breast cancer. And we had a roster with some of the women would going in, and they would all, and I had them, you've got to do this, 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 this. And one of it is to make poultices up. And one of the women got a little bit excited, and she made a whole lot of poultices up. She made like a whole week's worth of poultices up. And I came in, and guess what? They were all ruined. She had them in the fridge because it smelt like everything in the fridge went into the poultice. So, getting back to this, I would freeze that and cut off a piece. If you only want a small piece, you might want a larger piece, but that's ready for you to be used, and so you don't have to go out and all of a sudden. So this is a really handy one. You can roll it as thin as you want, but it doesn't want to be too thin. And then you just take the one side of it off, and you could put it with a bit of chucks like I just did on Maria's leg, just with a bit of there to keep it in place. One little thing is, if you're going to do this on an ulcerated sore long term, you may tattoo it. Be careful. Work it out. Now, just once or twice on an ulcerated sore is not going to tattoo it. But, well, that's how you tattoo people. It becomes black. You'll get a black. You get it black will be in. Yeah, as it heals, you won't be able to get it out. So you need to be aware of that. So don't do it long term with poultices, with charcoal. It's probably best for this. Now, for a wound like that, but if it was really, really ulcerated, I would use it maybe once or twice, but not too long. Then I'd try a different poultice. Then I'd come back to it, and I'd alternate it. But you just do poultice after poultice, charcoal, 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 charcoal. I heard that there was a girl, she tattooed herself on her face. And she didn't mean it, And once it's there, isn't it? Yeah, so you need to be aware of that. Okay, I think that's all the things from charcoal that I was going to share with you about. Now I'm going to talk to you about clay. What do I do with my... Oh, here it is. The clay. Clay has the ability... Now, this is bentonite clay. This is bentonite clay powder, and I've got there's some bentonite clay powder down the back if you want to get it. Now, there's two ways you can have it. What it does, clay has the ability to absorb toxins and pollutants. As the clay dries, it draws out impurities and helps to nourish the area due to its high mineral content. Now, you can use clay internally. Now, what I'm going to tell you is you can use clay very much like you use charcoal. And you can combine them too. You can have half charcoal, half clay, and it works wonderful because it actually pulls out different toxins. But I think charcoal is universally known to pull out many toxins, but so does clay. Now, what it is, first of all, this is internally. It draws out radiation, heavy metals, and drugs. It's good for acid reflux, for digestive problems. It's good for anemia, increased circulation, lowers cholesterol, pulls out diabetic ulcers, pulls out liver spots, It's good for diabetics. It balances your hormones and expels worms and parasites. Now, how I've made this poultice drink, I mix 1 part of powdered clay with 10 times the amount of water. So if I put 1/4 cup of powdered clay in, I would put 10 1/4 cups in, which is 2.5 cups. Okay, so this is you normally, once again, if I just have a glass of water and I put a bit of clay on top of it, it'll just float. How do we get it to absorb? Well, what I do is I put this particular mixture in, and usually I put in probably 1/4 cup of clay to 2.5 cups of water in my blender. Clay does not like metal. You do not use metal And a lot of my times when I'm doing poultices, I like to use plastic when I'm doing them because there's a reaction with metal. Okay, so with clay especially, you don't use metal. So what you do here, but when I put it in the blender, I will blend it for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, and then I'll pour it out immediately. So those 1 or 2 seconds is not going to cause a reaction on those blades at the bottom of your blender. But then I'll pour it into a glass bottle like I've got here. Now that is my poultice drink. Now that is sort of the thickness of cream. Now if I was going to drink it, I haven't got a glass clean here. No, I haven't got a glass here. I only bought one glass out here, and I forgot to bring an extra glass out. Now, what I'll do here, this is a cup. What I'll do is I put about a quarter of a cup of that, and then I put in the rest water, and that's my clay drink. Does anybody want to come and have a drink of that? Oh. Okay.
I don't know whether I'll drink it all of it.
No. You know what? Tastes like nothing.
That's quite nice.
Quite nice? It tastes like chalk. That's what it tastes like. It's really got not much taste to it at all. Anybody could drink that. Now that glass bottle would be able to go into your cupboard. You do not have to refrigerate it. It won't go off. You could have it. Yes, that's what, this? Clay? Do you sell them already made up? No, you've got to make it up yourself. Someone else want to come and have a drink? I've got 2 glasses here. Oh, like every morning.
Every morning.
Yeah, once a day. There you are. Take one of them.
Thank you, Grandma.
This time, drink it all.
So, drink it. I can drink it all.
Yeah, you can drink it all. There you are. Good on you. That's all right. Yeah, I would stir it. I didn't stir it. Not too bad.
That's quite good.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
No, it's quite good. Thank you.
Okay, now what I've done, because clay, when you mix it, what I've done is I've mixed it with water to make it into a paste. There it is. Can you see that? I've already done it because when you mix it, it takes a while to mix. And I mixed it at home. And what you do then is you can put that directly onto any sore, any area, like this. This is what we're getting to externally. You mix some powdered clay with just enough water to a thick paste is achieved. 1 part of clay to 3 parts of water. Now what you do is it actually, as you let it sit there, it actually it gets thicker and thicker. You know, it's quite hard to get to the right consistency because you come back and you think, oh, that's gone thicker. But that's normally, it absorbs the water. Okay, you apply directly to the affected area, you cover with plastic, and you leave it until it's dry. And once it's dry, it's finished. You just flake it off, and you throw it away. Then you reapply another one. What do you use it for? Broken bones, insect bites, poisonous bites, swellings, burns, moles, toenail fungus, athlete's foot. It reduces pain and inflammation. It cleans ulcers and abscesses, for fading tattoos, for beauty masks and baths to detox. Now, Can I tell you that I have told this to a lot of people, and some people, they've had a tattoo and they want to get rid of it. This is the way you do it, but it's a long-term thing. It's so powerful it will pull out the ink out of tattoos. Okay, but you've got to persist. It won't happen just the first time. Sometimes you might have to do it for a year. It's a long-term thing.
So if you tattoo yourself with a charcoal on your face, you put the best get it done.
I'd reckon you'd be able to, but I'm not sure. I wouldn't guarantee it. I wouldn't guarantee it. But that's how you do it. You put it on your skin like that. Now, there's another way, and it's great if you've got a little pot like this made up. Do not just go in and with your finger in there, because if you've got any toxin on your finger, will mould that. You'll come back to that. I always am very careful to use something like plastic to get it out, or I've got a little wood spatula which sometimes I use too, or anything plastic, but you get it out and you put it on where you have to, because you'll come back to there and it'll be all mouldy and you say, oh, look, it's all mouldy. What have I done wrong? Well, the reason is because you put your finger in there and you've had something on your finger and it just will mould. So you need to be aware of that. And it's great for beauty masks to detox. And yes?
What does it do to broken bones?
Okay, it heals. It'll help a broken bones. I've got some more things with comfrey in a minute. But you can use it because it really will help the broken bone. Okay? But usually if you've got a broken bone, if you've got it in plaster, you can't do things with it. This is when you've got something like a broken toe or a broken finger. You haven't got them in plaster. Yeah, that's when I would use that. Ideal for baths, to detox in a bath. I've done this many times with people who are detoxing. What you've got to do when you want to detox, you've got to use your skin to detox. Not just your feet only, but your whole body. And so you have a bath, you have Epsom salts in your bath, you can have 1 or 2 cups of clay in your bath, and you will pull out the toxins. Now, like I said to you before, I have done a bath with charcoal in it, and I have done baths with clay in it, and now can I tell you, I prefer the clay, because guess who's got to clean it up? It will make charcoal in your bath will make an absolute mess, and you've got a real job to clean it. Clay is less worrisome; it just goes down. Now, this clay actually stays in suspension too. You can have that clay in your cupboard for a year. And you'll come back and it'll still be in suspension. Now, some of the clays that you can buy actually settle down and they become down the bottom, the sediment down the bottom, and you just got water on them. And if you want to use them, you've got to shake them up, which will work. But this is why bentonite clay is so great, because it stays in suspension inside your body too. So it stays completely in suspension. I'll just check what stories I was going to tell you about.
Excuse me, would that work on spurs? If you've got a spur on your knee, would that dissolve the spur?
No, if I had a spur on my knee, what would I use? Castor oil. Castor oil. Now, I have one of the ladies who came to one of my classes. She told me that she went home and she was walking out in the garden and she ran a whole lot of a piece of Rio up under her toenail. And she was like in agony. And she came in and she said the phone rang. Just as she got in, it was the sister. And the sister said, get the clay on it. So she got the clay on it and she put the clay on it, and immediately she said the pain went out of it. It's wonderful to have. It really does take pain out of things. Now, I was in Fiji, and one of the times I was in Fiji, in between my classes, they had a health clinic there, a health place where the people taking guests. And one of the guests is a lady who I'd met over the years before when I'd gone to New Zealand a few times. And I knew her. And so I used to sit and talk with her. And she was doing a detox. She had different things wrong with her. And she was a small woman, but she was very round, and she had quite a few rolls of fat around in her abdomen. And in between those rolls, she had ulcerated. And she said to me, she said, she says, oh, this just feels so, and she lifted it up and showed me, and she said, it is so sore, so sore. And I thought, oh, clay. And I immediately went up and I got some clay, and I just got that and I smoothed it on. And she says, oh, that feels good. Oh, just took the pain away just like that. Absolutely. These are such simple things. God has given us such simple things that we can use, and we can share this with people, and we can help people. And it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. I know that you have to have, you need a little bit of supply, but just like I told you, if you don't have activated charcoal, you can get it out of your fire. Now, there's no rule that says you cannot go out into your backyard and dig up your garden and you get down to the clay and you can use that clay. There's no rule that says you can't do it. Now, I personally would be very careful without using it internally, but externally, no problem whatsoever. I can remember when I was doing my course going back how many years ago, Peter, I had to do all these modules of all these remedies, and I can still remember I had to do one on clay, and I think Simon went out to the weir and got a bucket of clay, and he brought in, and I smeared it all over Peter, and I had him in the bathtub, because where else do you go? Okay, so I had him in the bathtub, and he thought it was just absolutely wonderful. Made his skin feel so silky smooth. Some people actually do it outside on the lawn. If it's summer, you can do it on the lawn, and then you can just hose them off. But it pulls toxins out. We've got to use our skin to pull toxins out. If so many people, they're toxic. If you've got somebody, and I remember a woman, she had, you've got tick bites, you've got Lyme disease, you've got all these other things, you've got these, and your body is just absolutely full of toxins. How do you get them out? Well, most of our people, they're constipated, they can't get them out through the bowel, so let's use the skin. Pull them out through the skin. And this is a way you can get them out through your skin. And I can still remember one of the ladies in Fiji, she had a clinic, she was taking people in. She says, you'd go into the garden, to a shady part of the garden, you went down so far and you used clay. And she said, we would always be using clay. And I can remember one book I've got at home called Let Nourishment Be Your Healer. There was a lady she went to Brazil. She had bone tuberculosis plus another tuberculosis all through her body, cancers all through her body. She went to Brazil 3 months to this clinic in Brazil, and they treated her primarily, or lots of times she had she had proper diet, she had water, sunshine, she had to do all those sort of things, sun baths every day. But one of the procedures she had to do was 3 hours in a mud bath, and there was onions mixed through that mud, and she had to lie there, and it was on her abdomen, right from her neck down right to her upper leg, and she had to lie down there 3 hours a day, and she put her feet in a hot foot bath. And she said, at the end of the 3 months, she was cured of her bone tuberculosis, and she'd had many different operations on it, and no doctor could cure her, so she was cured. So, bentonite clay. Now I'm going to share with story to you. Yes?
Can I ask a dumb question? What's in the clay? That is so healing. What's in the clay?
Yeah, I think you'd say. I think it is the minerals. It's something that I really can't tell you exactly what it is. It's just what's in the ground. What is in it? What is in your clay? What's in your charcoal? Something it is. I can't tell you exactly what it is. This is some comfrey. Now I have a huge garden of comfrey at home, and I use it a lot, and I dry a lot because there's always somebody who comes to me and they say, "Oh, you got some comfrey?" And so you need to have comfrey on hand. What do you use comfrey for? It is an anti-inflammatory. It contains allantoin that speeds up healing, and you use your larger leaves. This is one of the few plants that you don't use the smaller leaves. The smaller leaves have a pyrrolizing alkaloid in it, which actually scares the animals away. You know, when it comes through after the winter, and it just pops up in the ground after, all the animals want to come and they want to feed off it. Well, it's got this pyrrolizing alkaloid that deters the animals. It needs to get until they get into a huge leaf like this, and then it has less in it. Often you want tender young leaves to eat, but this is one of the opposite ones. So use your larger leaves. And plus, internally, use sparingly. One leaf per day in a salad or drink. They say if you have too much comfrey, it actually can clog up your liver. If you've got a very toxic liver, you need to be cautious. But comfrey is, look, I take it. I'm just telling you, it's done me no harm. And I take it internally. I've made it into a tea, but normally I would just pop that into a smoothie or something like that. That's how I take it normally. And it detoxes your liver. It aids in sleep. It's good for coughs. Comfrey is one of the best poultices you can for lungs. If you've got lung problems, you have coughs. You know, somebody who's got, especially if you had lung cancer, this would be the one for that. Aids arthritic conditions. It rapidly heals bones, ligaments, muscles, tendons, cartilage. It increases your bone density. It is so good to take for this. It is a bone healer. Anybody who's got a broken bone should be taking comfrey. It speeds up your healing of your broken bones. I've got comfrey down the back. I've got some comfrey leaves, which is not easy to find. That's why I try to have a few little things. I've got a very small shop, if you understand what I mean by this. It's not really a shop, but it's just in one of my cupboards. But it's things that most people find it harder to buy. If it's easy to buy at a health food shop, you get it from there. But usually you find comfrey harder to find. Comfrey root, and I'll talk to you that about now. This is comfrey root powder. Yes, comfrey root powder I tend to use for poultices. I don't use that for drinking. It's even comfrey, this gets very sort of slimy type of, it's sort of like it's got a mucilage in it. And it's the same with that. It gets like that. But that is absolutely excellent for healing. I'll tell you some things. You can use the comfrey root for poultices. I tend to do that. If you didn't have the comfrey leaf, use your comfrey root for poultices. But if you didn't have the comfrey root, use your comfrey leaf. There's no reason why you can't. I think the comfrey root is better for poultices. You use it for bruises, sprains, strains, inflammation, broken bones, muscles, torn ligaments, tendons and cartilage. You use for broken skin, you use for burns, and you use for tumours. Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's excellent. I'll just find my page here.
So when you're growing comfrey, you usually thaw it back in the winter time. It can't get across.
Okay, so that's when you use your root. If you've got a person who's got a broken bone, that's when you use. And I'll tell you a story. I have a friend, she fell off. She was in her 50s, mind you, and she fell off a motorbike. She was trying to learn to ride a motorbike, and they didn't tell her how to stop it. So she fell off it to stop it, and it fell on her leg. Well, guess what? Ambulance, the whole thing, doctors in there. Her kneecap was shattered. She went to, I'll just back step up. Her husband was going into hospital every day, and they were waiting for an operation because the doctor told her that she had to have part of her hip bone removed, and they were going to fashion a new kneecap, and they were going to sew it in place on her knee. And she was a little bit alarmed about this, but she thought, well, if this has to be, she wants to walk. And so she went, and then that's right, the doctor came in to put her under. He was ready to. She was all anesthetic. She was under anaesthetic. She was ready to be operated on her. He got her on the operating table, and he looked at her knee and he says, "This is too swollen. I can't operate on this." So he sent her back, to the room. Her husband got her and he says, "Okay, we are out of here." He discharged her from hospital. He took her back, and at that stage, a friend of mine, some of you may know Barbara O'Neill, she went back to Barbara's place, and Barbara it was winter time, there was no comfrey leaf available. So they had a huge garden of comfrey root. So they dug up the roots, washed them all off, they put them in the food processor, and they had Katie on the couch. Her leg was there. For 5 weeks she was on a couch with her leg up. Constant comfrey poultices on the kneecap. She said, and I asked her what happened. At the end of 5 weeks, she was up walking on a frame like this. And she went back to the doctor, and the doctor x-rayed her knee and it had completely healed. It came back together. Okay, and I said, now tell me, describe it to me carefully. What did it feel like? She says, and she sat there and she says, I think it felt like what happens to a woman when she's carrying a baby and the baby just moves inside of her. That's what it felt like. She said she had no control over that movement. She just could feel the bones moving inside of her kneecap. And it was completely healed. But as I said to you earlier about that faith part, there was faith in this too. They prayed a lot. They prayed for her healing. And she said that the worst part was at the back of a calf of a leg where she actually had a big gash that was the muscle part was sorer than the knee, the bone part, because it took longer to heal. And 3 months later, she was right. She was really walking around. It just proved what a strong power comfrey has. It's absolutely incredible. Yes?
My son's got collarbone damage.
Yes.
We don't know why. He's 22. We don't know why, but it's damaged. He should have surgery. He can't bowl, do those actions anymore. And he has pain. Something like
Absolutely. Did you know I'm going to talk next week about a particular treatment, a water treatment, and one of the treatments on a person who had a protruding disc was a water treatment, but in between the water treatments, she would do a comfrey root poultice overnight on her back. You see, sometimes you need to balance. Remember, it's not just going to be just one thing. You have to think. You have to start putting things together because it rebuilds tissues. It rebuilds all that sort of things. Now, there's something else I was going to tell you about. Now, this will probably amaze you when you hear this story. I had a lady in my lounge room, and she came and she said to me, she said, my husband was careless or something and he sawed the top parts of his fingers off, just below the fingernail. And she said, do you know what we did? We did equal parts comfrey, honey, and she said wheat germ oil, poulticing it, and you know something, those fingers grew back. Because the tips didn't grow, because the husband, she had to go to hospital, she told me, and she said her husband didn't keep up the, you know, some men aren't as fussy as women and doing the dressings, and he didn't bother dressing it anymore, he just let it dry out and it stopped it. But while it was still healing, she put the comfrey and she packed it on all the time, packed it on, packed it on, packed it on. And I was so stunned when I heard this. I turned around and I said to her, she had a son there who was about 18. I said, do you remember that? You know, like in disbelief. He says, yep, I was there. Anyhow, but I've also seen a number of times. I actually spoke to, I emailed a lady because I know of her. She's online. I've seen her. She does the same sort of thing that I do in America. And she was saying that she was at there's a place called Uchee Pines in America which trains people doing what I'm doing. And they had a man, one of their men there, he cut the tops of his fingers off too. And guess what? She said, we use comfrey poultices. And then he came on camera, he says, see, these are the fingers. He held them up. He says, they were the ones that, he said, and they grew back with the fingernails. And he said, guess what? 3 weeks it took to grow back. Prayer, though, don't forget. Remember, these people prayed. That's part of it. They believed God could heal them. She said that, you know, and they had doctors there. He said, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to do it. I want to do it this way. And guess what? And you know what really, really sort of reassures your faith when you realise something like that and you think, wow, what an incredible way. But I heard that years ago. I heard that Aboriginals too also have things that they can even know if they even regrow limbs and that sort of thing. I've heard that's done. I know, and one of these ladies, she was also saying that she's started to regrow the holes in her teeth. You know how to fill in a hole in your tooth. And your tooth will regrow. But you've got to know how to do it, and you must have a clean diet. None of this, all the stuff that a lot of people are putting in their diet, you must be on the right diet. But you can repair that sort of damage done to your body as well. Even after 5 years? No. Sorry. It has to be just done. Yeah, sorry about that one. Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to share with you, I think that's broken skin, burns, tumours. I think that's for comfrey. Okay, comfrey must not be used on any area that has metal pins or plates. This has the potential to draw them out. Be careful. Sorry?
A spinal fusion would be really great later.
Okay, you need to be careful. Okay, and always with your herbs, they are powerful. They're not just something that you know. Oh, just have a whim on. Okay. Next, I'm going to talk to you about a cabbage poultice. I'm going to show you how to do that one. Now, cabbage poultice absorbs poisonous juices from the body, carries away stale blood and built-up fluids that are badly bruised and swollen. Now, you notice on the left we've got a drumhead cabbage. And on the right, I've got one of these cabbage. Chinese cabbage, isn't it? A wombok. can I tell you, for what I'm doing now, I prefer this one. The other one is very dry. You take a leaf off and it's very dry. Now what you do, if that's all you've got is a drum head, you use it because it will work. But you have to break all the fibre down in the leaves. It's like with a comfrey poultice here. I didn't even show you how you do this one. I would just slice it up or put it in a food processor or something and get it to mush and just put it on my chucks. That's how I would use comfrey poultice. You may add a little bit of moisture to it. You will look at it. You'll just check it. The same with, obviously, with the comfrey, going back to comfrey, you would just make a paste out of the root powder. Yes?
Can I just say, growing up, we used dock leaves as
Yes.
well, because they didn't have that hairy layer that coffee
Yeah.
leaves have.
Yes.
But the same in terms of drawing things out.
Yes. I have come to the conclusion that you can nearly use any leaf, as long as it's edible. Remember, I'm not talking about poisonous leaves. I'm talking about edible food. You can put it on your body. And there's no rule that says you can't put onion and comfrey and you can't put all these charcoal and the potato and what on your body. Nobody thinks about it there, but it does work. Now, let's get back to cabbage. I first heard about this when a young woman, she'd been working at a health retreat, and she was telling me that they had women with lymphedema in, when you get that really swollen arm after they have the breast cancer. And she said we would be packing cabbage leaves around the edge, around the outside of a leaf. And in the morning, they'd come and they'd just cut them off. And she said there'd be all this brown juice that coming out of it. That she said, and this is when she told me that the organic cabbages work best, but the others did work as well. Remember I told you that last week? Organic is best, but the others do work as well. Now, I heard this, and I went to Tonga. Over in Tonga, I was helping some people over there, and there was, at the place where I stayed, this lady she was quite an influential lady in Tonga. She had a lovely home, but her brother turned up. And he had diabetes, and he had huge legs, swollen from diabetes. He'd been to the doctor, he'd been to the hospital, he'd been everywhere. He didn't know whether to put them up or put them down. They hurt wherever he put them, they hurt. So he came to us and he said, well, could you help him? And I said, yes. The first thing I thought, well, I'll try potato. And we tried potato. No, there was with this particular trip, I went there with a group of Fijian women, and they were the ones busy. We were all helping each other, and they were there. We got potatoes, grated them all up and packed them around his leg. But you know what? We were there on a shoestring budget, and our potatoes cost us $5 a kilo. Now that was huge, because they don't eat as many like potatoes in Tonga as they do more of the sweet potato and all that, which I know now you can use all those things too, but I didn't know that then. Anyhow, we decided to, I thought to myself, no, I'll try cabbage. And so I got him to bring the cabbage back, the man himself. I said, you bring the cabbage back. And he did it morning, night, morning, 2.5 times. And at the end of it, I could pinch the skin around his ankle. He was one happy man. Okay, and I'll show you how I did it. Actually, I'll just talk. I'll come back to that in a minute. I got ahead of myself there. Okay, you can use, this is ideas for your cabbage poultice. You can apply your forehead for sinus congestion, sprained or dislocated shoulder, reduces pain of arthritis. You can wrap a cabbage leaf over the joint. Remember, bruise your cabbage leaf first. Reduces swollen arms in lymphedema. Soak cotton wool in the juice and position over eyes and cheek. Use for breast cancer, for sciatica, and you can use it in burns mixed with a cup of Epsom salts. Cabbage juice heals stomach and intestinal complaints. Now that's back onto the cabbage. Okay, so this is how I'm going to do the cabbage. So I'm going to just, what I'll do is I just pull off some of these outer leaves, and the outer leaves are ideal. Now I've got a breadboard back here. You may not see it clearly. And I've got a rolling pin. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roll them, and I can see the juice coming out of them. Now that's ideal. And this is what we use. We found more luck with this cabbage on that man in Tonga than we did with the other ones. And so what you do, these are sort of not really good. The ones that you I'd like to use, they pick off because people don't, you know. I would, if I was doing it and I only had a drumhead cabbage, I would use my food processor. Add a little bit of water, just a spoon at a time. Try to get it mushy. That's what you need. And then I'd put it in a chunks. But I also did this on a lady this same lady who has breast cancer. And I found, and she had lymphedema, huge arm, and it worked, but it made her arm quite a little bit ulcerated. I could see little sores starting to come. It was pulling out everything through it. And I thought, no, she doesn't need this. She was in late stages breast cancer, so I stopped this, right? The best time for these things is early rather than late. If you wait till late stages of some of the things, you can cause other problems by, like, as I said, it would pull out those other toxins through the skin. So I just stopped that. I thought she doesn't need this at this stage in her illness. But she was quite happy to try all these things. She was a willing guinea pig. And that however many you want. Now we used to do, because when we were doing it on this man, he had 2 legs and we were going from his knee right down to nearly to his toes, and we were just putting it right there. So he'd have to bring maybe 2 cabbages in every day, twice a day. And what got him to do it, you know, it wasn't left with us to have the expense of getting these cabbages. I said, no, well, if you want the treatment, you bring it in. In between, I would just take his legs, wash it with soap and water and dry it, then put another one on. But one time, I'll just tell you this before I forget, another time I went to Tonga, and I went to another island called Vava'u, okay? And that is about an hour's trip away from the main island. And I got there, and the lady was in charge of the program. I went into the hall, and there was 30 people lined up around there already, all sitting at tables. They all wanted to learn. And I got in on the plane probably late morning, and they were ready to start. And I said, well, I've got nothing. I haven't got where's cabbage? Oh, we've got no cabbage. I said, what do I do? I thought, okay. She says, oh, we've got lettuce. They had a huge, because it was a department of agriculture where I did the program, and she had these huge big lettuces growing in their hot greenhouses. And they were so green on the outside, they were huge. They were selling them growing them to sell for the market. And I said, they might be due. Look, I'll just take a lettuce inside, And I said to everyone, I said, now you all know what a cabbage is versus a lettuce. I said, I want you to use your imagination. Just pretend that this is a cabbage. And I showed them how to do it using the lettuce. And I got a lady up there, she had a bad knee, and I put it on a knee. And I said, okay, now I just wrapped it up. Next morning when she came back, she says, look at me. My knee. She says, the best night's sleep I've had in 9 years. She said, it didn't hurt when I turned. Does lettuce work? That's the only time I've ever tried lettuce. But they were very, very nutritious, and they were the large green outer leaves. It's the same with this. I think you're going to get more pull if you're going to use the outer leaves, the large green outer leaves in your wool of that. Now, have we got someone else who wants to come up again? We'll put it on the arm this time.
I've got a sore finger that was off it. It's only in there though.
Okay, if you've got a sore, by the way, if you've got an animal bite, you do hot and cold and you put some charcoal in the water. That's what you need to do. Have your charcoal in the water, but you do hot, cold. And I'll talk about that next week. That's all your animal bites. Punctures, that's what you needed to do on yours. If you had a dog bite, that's what you need to do. Get your foot in charcoal water.
I've got a fatty tumour on my leg. Would it work on that?
Yeah, but can you pull you've got...
Yeah. Oh, I've got fluid on my legs.
Okay, we'll try it down there. Yep. I could do a little bit more then. Just sit down and we'll put that on. I'll just grab my glad wrap. And what you do, it's a balancing act to get this all around there. Sometimes I use a paper towel to keep it in place. But what we're going to do is we just put it around like this.
You want to hold?
Yes, please. Some other hands here, please. And you just pack it around like this. Maybe we'll hand around here, right? Can you just put your hand down here?
Yeah.
That's how you do it. Okay, and we did it right down to the middle of the foot, and I'll just show you how to do it because it's a bit awkward here now, and we're not
Oh, you're right.
in the. You can leave it on for a while and see how you go. But this will weep, just like the potato poultice. This will drip. You must. If she was going to bed with this on, which you could, you must put a plastic garbage bag over that, otherwise it'll drip in your bed. Okay, you leave that on for the time being. It will pull out juices, remember that? I said to you? So it pulls out poisonous juices out of your Yes?
In South Africa, we put cabbage leaves on our breasts.
Yes.
when we were-
Yes.
Hallelujah.
For breasts, for women who have got mastitis, breastfeeding women, you can put your cabbage leaf there. Yes.
I used to do it at the Mercy Hospital.
Yes. Women know that that's one of the standbys for yeah. Okay, now I'm going to talk to you about slippery elm. Slippery elm is a powder. It's a bark from the slippery elm tree. It is one of the best known drawers. It can be used and mixed with charcoal, and it's great for inflammation. It's a complete food, can sustain people for months. They say in America during the with the American Red Indians, they would use this as a staple for their food if they didn't have food. It is excellent food. So you can use this and you can make it. Now this is great internally. You take it internally because it coats your digestive tract. Now, how many people have digestive problems? So many people have digestive problems. Use slippery elm. Slippery elm is good for your bowels. It's good for your mucus, inflamed areas, ulcers, aids digestion, upset stomach. It's good for hiatus hernia, heartburn, and indigestion. Take 1 teaspoon of slippery elm powder at least 3 times a day, especially before bed. You mix to a paste with a cup of boiling water, stirring all the time. This coats wall of digestive tract. There's a number of recipes which you'll find in the book on to take it internally. You can use it. There's another one that says that you can put a teaspoon or tablespoon of slippery elm, a little bit of honey, tablespoon of slippery elm, and a cup of boiling water. You stir it, and then you take that every hour for weeks, 2-3 weeks. Every hour, you just coat that digestive tract. And you will find that any of those upset, like that digestive problem, will be soothed, incredibly soothed. This is excellent for people with Crohn's or irritable bowel. Excellent for it. So you need to take it. Take it internally, but it really needs to be mixed with hot water. Otherwise, once again, this just floats. You can't mix it, and it goes glumpy and gluggy. So you need to mix it with the hot water, and you make it the right consistency, and then you can drink it. You obviously let it cool down till you drink it.
2 pot of water, Kaye, does it make the efficiency of it?
Not that I know of. I don't. Yes, not that I know of. You do yours with a bay mix in cold water. Okay, if you do it in a what? Okay, if you do it in a bullet, it mixes better. Yeah. And you can use cold water. But look, it's up to you. Yeah. Okay, use externally for pulling out infections, boils, splinters, ulcers, pus sores, infections, abscesses, impetigo, dry scalp. You can use it as a beauty mask. It's good for wounds, and it regrows tissue. And it's good for a hair conditioner. It's fantastic as a hair conditioner. 2 tablespoons in 1 cup of water and leave on 3 hours and rinse it out, and it feels beautiful. I've done this off and on over the years, many times. Okay, now I want to share with a little story. I have a granddaughter who was at that time about 2, and she was playing in the backyard, and she had a gate blow shut when she had a foot in the way, and it was a tin gate, and it caught the back of a heel, and it cut her Achilles tendon. The Achilles tendon was just holding by a very, very slight thread or something, and she had to go to the hospital. The doctor got it and reattached the Achilles, and then she had plaster. Okay, and then after the plaster came off, she was, as I said, 2. She was freaking out because they cut her leg when the plaster came off. The saw cut her leg. Anyhow, she was really very emotional about the whole issue, and so when her leg was out of plaster, at the back of on a heel, right on a heel, she had a lump, which she was told was a stitch that was still in there. And my daughter said to me, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, look, because the doctor said she's got to come back in and get it cut out." And because my granddaughter was freaking out, didn't want to have anything to do with the doctors, I said, "Get slippery elm." Now, slippery elm is wonderful because you can make it in little parcels. Now, did you know that slippery elm will work in a similar way as potato. But slippery elm is so much more expensive, you wouldn't cover the same sort of area for the price you're going to use for slippery elm. So I use this more selectively, but it pulls and it draws just like potato. So what I do is I would take about half a teaspoon of this or a teaspoon of it. I'll mix it up on a saucer with just a touch of water to make it into a paste. Then I would put it on a Band-Aid and we put it on crisscross on a heel. And it took probably about 3 days, and you could see that bringing that little stitch to the area on, and my daughter could just go pop and it just came out. Just so simple, just a simple thing like that. That is ideal. If you've got kids with school sores, this is ideal. You could just make tiny little ones. You could put them underneath Band-Aids. You can make tiny little parcels of chucks if they're larger, or if they're small enough to go under a Band-Aid, they're ideal. It's great. I had one of my grandsons, he came home and he was about 16 and he had this huge blind pimple in between his eyes. And he's quite disturbed by it because he'd had it for about 6 months. And every time he'd come up to a head, he'd squeeze it and it just came back again. I said, get some slippery elm on it. So I put slippery elm on it, and would you believe, next I heard that was it. That was the end of it. Just healed, came up, brought it out, pulled out the infection, and it healed. He was so thrilled because, you know, it's what it's like to have a big sore in the middle of your forehead.
My grandson has a wart, and the mum's taken him to the doctors and everything, can't get rid of it. This one here. Would that help?
Not for a wart, I wouldn't think. For a wart, I would go for... Look, I would use a lot of different things. Go for a lot of them, but just try them. I would probably more so castor oil. I would even think to burn it off with one of the things which I'm going to talk about in week 4, which is when I'm talking about your herbs and your garden weeds, which we can use for eating. Yeah, those sort of things. Yeah, garlic would be a thing if you want to burn it off too. Yeah, put a slice of garlic on a Band-Aid and put the Band-Aid over it, and that'll blister it. It will make a sore out of it, and let him know that it's just going to turn into a sore, but then it will heal. See if you can get rid of it that way. Sometimes garlic is one of the best, yes. Yeah. Another one too, I had a woman, she rang me one day and she said to me, she'd had an operation, it was just above her waist, and she said she'd had an operation and it was just a hole there, and she said she got golden staph when she was in the hospital. So she went back to the hospital and got it scraped out twice. She rang me up and she says, what do you do? I said, pack it with slippery elm. I said, this here. If the sore is wet, you could just put the powder in, but if it's a little bit dry, you could make it into a moist it. She put it in there and she said it cleaned it up wonderfully, and she went back to the doctor and the doctor says, it looks like we've done a good job here. And she was quite happy about that, and she said no, she said nothing, what she'd been doing. But anyhow, it works. It really works. Do you know, this is what they used to use in the American Civil War. They had men who are, you're talking about, this is in the 1800s. They had men who have half of their big holes in their body. What? They packed it with slippery elm. It will regrow tissue. Remember that. Regrows tissue. So if you've got somebody with bed sores, I would put slippery elm down the back. Slippery elm. And sometimes you could pack them with slippery elm. I would actually use comfrey as well with bed sores, comfrey and slippery elm. And I actually have had, I make a comfrey ointment which when you make an ointment, which is another class, which is ointments and oils, but you must dry your herbs before you use them, and then you soak them in oil and you put beeswax in it, and and the recipe is in your book under ointments and oils. Make comfrey ointment, and you can pop it on there. That will heal bed sores. So if you soak these, dry these first. Yes. Yeah, plantain. I'm talking about plantain on week 4. That's so good. This plantain can be used for lots of things. Lots and lots of things. And so many people are pulling it out of their garden, they think it's a weed. Okay, we will move on now to an aloe, which I'll just briefly talk. Yes? A slippery elm comes from the slippery elm tree. It's just a specific elm tree. Yes, specific elm tree, yeah. So, and it's from America, I believe. I think we bring it in. It's like a little bag like that. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Oh, look, I don't know if it's $20 or so or something like that. But you wouldn't want to use, it's not like hugely expensive, but it's not, you wouldn't use it like you do with as I said, with the potato poultice. Now, the aloe is something which I wanted to share with you too, and we're talking about making a drink. What you do when you make an aloe drink, there's 2 sorts of aloe that's using, and that is the aloe vera barbadensis, which is this one. It's a thicker one. It grows from a rosette down the bottom. It grows up. This is a candelabra, which has leaves coming on right up there. It can grow to 1 to 2 metres high. I've got loads of this at home. Haven't got as much barbadensis at home, but I've got candelabra. Now, when you make it as a drink, you put it in a glass for about a half an hour and just let it sit. And all that yellow comes out, and that's really the bitter part. And then you drain it, and then you cut it up and you put it in water, and you let it sit in water, and you let it sit probably overnight, and then that water is aloe water. It's very, very healthy. Very good to be drinking. Very good for your digestion, very good for any time you're with your aloe. A whole section in there on aloe, and you all know how to use aloe on your cuts and bruises. You just take that edge of the leaf off and you fill it and you just slice it off and you just put it on. You put it straight on your burn. Excellent. One of the best things you've got for burns.
Yeah, we've got tons of it growing. We just sliced it open and put it on the sunburn.
Yes.
And then I glad wrap it and put it in the fridge and it regenerates.
Yes. Yes.
So you can keep using it.
Yes, you can. You don't have to use it. Look, I've used often when I cut it like this, I will take that leaf and I will just put it in the fridge. Usually put a plastic bag over the end so it doesn't drip out everywhere. But that's because it'll keep like that in this fridge for a week or so. Now, I want to share another one too. This is Epsom salts. Epsom salts, you know what Epsom salts looks like, don't you? Oh, actually, I think that's my next one, isn't it? Epsom salts. Magnesium sulfate has the ability to draw off poisons and replenish the loss of magnesium to the body, conveying to the nerve endings. Okay, use your Epsom salts in your bath, and if you want, you can use it for flus, colds, aches and pains, burns, stress, migraines, anxiety, insomnia, bedwetting, and high blood pressure. Now, those 3 down the bottom, I've got a little star beside it. I want you to know how to use them. Normally, when you have a Epsom salts bath, you would just put maybe 2 cups of your water, Epsom salts in your water. But when you have an Epsom salts drench, this is for those bottom three, for insomnia, for bedwetting and for high blood pressure. You mix 1/4 cup with 1 litre of warm water. Now, after showering, you pour this solution over your whole body. So you stand in your shower and you just drizzle it all over your whole body. And you sort of let it there half pat it dry. It's good if you can leave it on. Don't wipe it off. Now you leave that on, and that will help your insomnia, bedwetting and high blood pressure. And that's called an Epsom salts drench. Use Epsom salts for burns. 3/4 fill a glass jar with Epsom salts. Add water and dissolve. Keep adding salts until they will not dissolve anymore. You can keep it in the fridge. Soak a cloth in the solution and lay over the burn. As soon as the cloth warms up, repeat until pain is eased. Deeper burns can be treated with a potato poultice with Epsom salts mixed in with it. In most cases, it will stop scarring. Now, this is a little container that I have underneath my sink. Because guess what? How often you'll find you've burnt, and you need something fast. So it's just got the Epsom salts, which is still as a sediment down the bottom. There's so much in, there's water, but there's not enough to dissolve the Epsom salts. They does settle a bit, but that's fine. You just shake it up again. And that's what I would use to soak up a cloth and put it over a burn. If I burnt myself. Or sometimes, there's been many times I've just burnt myself and I'll just stick my finger in it or something. Now, you can keep it in the fridge. I don't keep it in the fridge, but obviously you'd keep it in the fridge if you wanted to make it cold. You know how it feels after you have a burn? You can put it in the fridge and it feels so cooling. Now, this is the candelabra and this is the barbadensis. You can see the difference in the aloe vera. I've jumped ahead of self. I talked about aloe vera. Antiseptic, inflammation, penetrates deeply. You use it for stings, itches, burns, stops bleeding. You use it for mouth ulcers and hair preparation. And this is here what I just told you as a general tonic. Cut your aloe vera and place in a glass. Cut into 2 centimetre chunks and place in a litre glass of water and leave to steep 8 hours or overnight. Drink a half to 1 glass first thing in the morning and a half an hour before each meal. After draining, you're refilled with water. You can use the same chunks for up to 7 days if kept in the fridge, and the water is changed daily. But normally I like to change it more often than that. Plus, you could put mint in this if you wanted to. There'd be no reason why you couldn't put mint in there to get it to taste. And you know what a lot of the health clinics they're doing? For people who've got digestive problems, they are doing the slippery elm and they're doing the aloe vera water. And they're doing it continually, all the time during the day. And people, they're healing of their digestive problems. You need to be using these things. That's the healing.
Excuse me 1 second. With your the first step and the second, why are you putting it in the glass?
Okay, well, you look. Okay, because you know it's quite yellow. That sap, that sap is very yellow and very bitter. Now, if you want to have it, you can have it. But I tell you what, that water is very, very bitter. Very bitter. That's what you'll see it. If you tip it upside down, you'll see a lot of yellow come out. That yellow is just next to the gel, just underneath the skin. And by the way, somebody also told me that if you get that skin, you know what, you fill it off your aloe vera. If you just get the skin part only, you dry it in a dehydrator, you crumble that up and you have that, and you can put it in capsules. That is an excellent laxative. Make your own laxatives. Excellent. Okay, now you can also use you can make a ginger poultice. I'm not doing this, I'm just telling you about it. You can combine ginger with other herbs to apply to the feet for quick absorption. Okay, and goes on. stimulates circulation, promotes perspiration, relieves chest in congestion, and stimulates the immune system, and it's an antispasmodic, prevents spasm. So you can grate up ginger too. That's an excellent additive. There are so many things you can put in your poultices. I really haven't done it full justice here, but I just want to give you a glimpse of what you can do.
Can you mix things?
Yes, yes. Okay, you can add ginger, you can add olive oil to the grated ginger and form into a paste. You can place on chucks and cover the affected areas, and you keep up to 24 hours. In the book there is a section on mustard. Be careful with when you're trying mustard plasters because they can actually burn your skin. But the instructions are in your book. Okay, now this is the last one I wanted to share with you today. I have got here what I was told and taught as an anti-plague formula. Believe me, nothing will live with this. Nothing. Anti-plague. I've got 3 jalapenos. I put this in the blender at home. I put in some ginger, about the size of a thumb. Some garlic, I put in approximately 1 bulb. I put in probably 2 onions. And I didn't put horseradish in this, but I covered it with apple cider vinegar and I blended it. And I stored it in a glass jar container and I left it for 14 days, and you can strain it. You can shake well every day. Take as often as required, and it keeps for months in the fridge. Excellent when coming down with the flu. Will clear your sinuses. Now, this is the best thing out. I'm going to let you have a taste of it in a minute. I've got some here. This one here it's all from the same batch. I did it in a larger jar. It is hot, very hot. This one's got all the puree, it's all the bits and pieces still in it. This one has been strained, so it needs to be shaken up. But can I tell you what? Over the years, I've done this class, and I've given a spoon to a person, and they'll say, oh, that tastes nice. I could use that as a salad dressing. Then the next person goes, yeah. I've had there's such different reaction. Some people hate it, and some people love it. One woman rang me up and she told me, and she said, I've lost my recipe for it. And she said, you know what? She said, I went home and it's the only thing that I've had stuffed sinuses for so long, but she said it cleared my sinuses out. She said, I know now what I can use for sinus. So this is ideal. Now, if you don't, and if people can't take it, and I understand it because it's not my most favourite thing, if you're coming down with a flu, I also would take charcoal. That would be something I would take. I would also do some hot and cold. There's a number of things I was coming down. If I felt coming down with a flu, there'd be different things I take. This would be one of them. Ideally, if you can handle it and if you've got it made up. Yes?
So can you not use it for 2 weeks after you've made it?
Oh yeah, it keeps for it keeps for months in the fridge.
So can you use it immediately, or do you need to wait?
Oh look, yes, that's it. Yes, I have used it immediately within days. But it's best if you wait for 2 weeks because it actually pulls out all those properties into the apple cider vinegar. Now, a son Simon, he was a school teacher, and he told the story. He took a bottle to his work because all the teachers in his staff room were coming down with the flu. Now, this is pre-COVID, and every single one of them who took the anti-plague formula didn't get sick. But every one of them said, "Oh no way!" They all got sick. Yes.
I've only used that with the wasabi, in the tube. How else would we find horseradish?
Pardon?
Where would we find horseradish?
You have to buy horseradish. I've got some horseradish growing, but it's not easy to find. Yeah. You have to find somebody with horseradish and get a piece. It's like ginger. No. Oh, you're talking about growing it or buying it. I found it at Arnold's once. Okay, we're talking about it. Now, while I've got some people, some of those ladies, can they come and start taking this around so people can taste these things? Marilyn and Lourdes. Now, I've got this. While you ask questions, maybe somebody has got the microphone if you've got questions. This is the cough medicine in honey, onion in honey from last week, which we forgot to taste. So I would suggest if you take any, use that one second. Take the cayenne pepper first. There is spoons there. And we need to take, no. Oh no, not the cups. That were just the spoons. If you need more spoons here, but that should be enough spoons, and they can put their dirty spoons in that. Yeah. No. Yeah. So you work out what you're going to do there. Hold on, we need somebody for the microphone.
So we do this one first? Okay, which one you said first? This one?
Yeah, use that one first because it's hot. That one's milder for them. Just hold on before you start. Can we have somebody to take the microphone around? Oh, you've got it. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Yes, go on.
Hello. There's a young man who's had swollen glands for about 4 weeks. What would you recommend?
Okay, I'm glad you spoke that. That's the very one. I had a granddaughter who had glandular fever when she was 16. My daughter sent her in to me and says, Mum, can you do treatments on her? And I said, okay, and I did water treatments on her, but I did a carrot poultice around the neck. What I did is I folded it long, so it went around the neck. Carrot poultice is a very good neck poultice. And that, something, I had her for probably 3 days, 2 days, she was right. Glandular fever and you know how quickly, glandular fever can be like that with 6 weeks. Okay, and even longer, but it was just so quickly when I did her with those treatments. I'm glad you reminded me of that one. So carrot poultice is ideal for the neck. But you could use some of the others, but I did use carrot poultice. Any other questions? Can you wait for the microphone, please?
Kaye, what would you recommend for lumbar stenosis?
Tell me what it is.
Your lower back, it degenerates. Yeah, so it's like the vertebrae over time.
I would use comfrey poultices, but I would combine them with some hydrotherapy. You need hydrotherapy. You need blood into the area. Your blood will bring the healing. How much it can be healed, I don't know. I can't tell you. But it would help the pain level. Any other questions? Can you put your hands up for the microphone?
Yeah, I just want to check what would be best for ear.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, what would be best for ear infections?
Onion, we had that last week. Onion. Yes, internal, yeah. Yeah.
Kaye, what would be best for a precancerous spot on the neck? He's been told that it's precancerous, and, I'm thinking something in this, surely I can put on it to, because we don't want the chemicals that they use on the skin cancer.
Look, is it a lump that's...
No, he suffers with eczema really bad, but this area is just here, and many doctors have said it's going to turn into cancer. So, and the last time was 2 weeks ago when the skin cancer doctor said it's not yet cancerous, but it's...
I would look, if I was faced with something like that, this is what I would do for myself. I would immediately look at what's causing it. What causes eczema?
Yep.
Well, eczema is caused from lots of things, and it's a very, very difficult thing to heal. But a lot of it's got to do with diet, but it's also got to do with a fungal problem. It's got to do with a lot of things. There's a big, big protocol to heal from eczema, but you need to start cutting out those inflammatory foods. I would go on to cut onto inflammatory foods. I would do all those things. So I'd make sure the diet is right. Absolutely none of those. Excuse me over there, do you mind keeping a bit quieter? Those inflammatory foods, especially your oils, I'm not talking about the only oils that I believe are safe are your cold pressed olive oil and your coconut oil, but all of those oils are incredibly inflammatory to your body, whether it is sunflower, safflower, peanut, whatever.
Yeah. Well, we don't use any of those. We're both anaphylactic to peanuts, so we wouldn't use peanut oil anyway.
Yep.
Because we're anaphylactic to that. But he's also, when he was born, he had a internal infection, and the doctors somehow think that this is all it as well. We have got rid of all the grains and all of that sort of stuff out of the diet, and it has helped it considerably. But it's this bit on his neck.
Look, it's sort of got me. I would try a few things at home. What you've heard over these last 2 weeks, I would try some of them.
Yep.
I would even think now, and I'd combine some of them. I'd think maybe, I could try some of the but I'm not sure if we will. Yeah, you need to and I tell you what, there's one thing that, just excuse me. One thing that psoriasis, the eczema is very much based with psoriasis. And one simple thing, which is some people have found so much help with psoriasis, is using Vicks vapor rubbers and ointment. And it just takes away psoriasis just like that. Now, it could be something that's worthwhile trying. It may not work. You may need to use a few things. I would try aloe vera. I would try a lot of the things. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit lost to know what I would go to, but
That's okay.
But I would just try lots of things.
I'll use the aloe vera because we've got loads of it at home.
Yeah.
So I'll try that because we know that the chemical that they use on the skin for the skin cancers,
Yes.
it burns. It's probably like garlic. It burns.
Yep. That's
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
Any other question? Mosquito bites. Well, I just said your charcoal. You could use anything. Yeah. Any of your bites. No, not really.
I've got a fatty tumour on the nerves in my spine and I can't operate.
Castor oil. That was last week's. Yeah. Okay, we talked about it. Now, by the way, too, up on there, and it's early days yet. Please forgive us for that. But we've got a Facebook page with last week's program is on that Facebook. That's it. You've got to go to Back to Eden with Kaye. That's Facebook. The YouTube is going to be exactly the same, Back to Eden with Kaye. And so you'll find it. So today's program will be on there as well. So if you want to watch last week's program, you need to go on to Back to Eden with Kaye. Because there's a lot of Back to Edens there.
Kaye, will you have everything that's available for sale next week that you've got here today next week as well?
If it's left over, I've got more at home, yeah. Yeah, I've got some more at home. I don't have a huge supply. I may run out of some things, I'm not saying, but I can get things in, but some of the things are getting harder to get in. Yeah. Not everything is available. But can I tell you what, I ran out of charcoal and I decided that's it, I'm not selling any more charcoal until I heard this program was coming up, and I thought of all you folk here. And so I bought a big bag of charcoal and I put it in these containers, and it is the worst job ever. And as I was doing it, I thought, oh. And I thought of you folk, and I thought, you don't know how hard it is, because I couldn't buy black tubs. I could only buy white tubs. You put charcoal into white tubs and you think, oh, what a job. Because they were getting messy, and oh, you don't know how hard it is. It is like, well, I've got it here for you specially for that reason, because I knew, and I know it is hard to find charcoal, activated charcoal. So any other questions? Yes? Just hold on.
I was able to get activated charcoal from Border Just Foods.
Where's you?
Yeah, they sold it. Well, they had a kilo bag there, and I bought a bag.
There you are. Keep going. Anyone else?
Hi, I've got a pinched nerve in the neck there, which is sending like pins and needles. It comes and goes, and it goes across the shoulder. Sometimes it goes down my arm. What can you do for that one?
Okay, that's a specific one for hot and cold treatments. You'll find that will help heaps.
Cough and cold.
Hot and cold treatments, which I'm going to do next week. Yep. Next week we're going, and I'll just tell you about next week we're doing hydrotherapy, which are water treatments. I'm going to show you how you can do water treatments that will help you recover. Simple things. Then the week after, we're going to deal with herbs, which are not just normal herbs as much as garden weeds, as well as herbs. Some are herbs that you'd buy, but a lot of them are in your garden. They're just weeds that are growing around, and how you can utilise them for your health. Any other questions before?
Sorry, but I have excess fluid in my legs. I can't get rid of it. So what is the best thing for that? Oh, sorry. I have excess fluid in my legs and I can't get rid of it.
I mean, other than trying your poultices, which are going to be hard, exercising, are you exercising?
It doesn't make any difference. Circulation, to do circulation.
Pardon?
To do circulation.
Yes, it's circulation. Your circulation is too slow. You need to get your circulation working really well. Your body will heal itself if you give it the right conditions. And so get your circulation going. Try your cayenne pepper. Try your hot and colds. Next week we'll be talking about hot and colds.
Thank you.
How to get your circulation going.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we can nearly wind up. Is there any last question? Well, yes?
Use that for a poultice, coconut oil.
Yes, you could use coconut oil, but in what way?
I don't know, just...
You could use it with a poultice, in a poultice, yes. Okay. But I usually more so take coconut oil internally than using it as a poultice. I use it in ointments sometimes, not as much. Okay then, everyone, I think we will leave it there. Thank you for today, and look forward to seeing you next week.